Parfait.
C'est parti.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Ernesto Ottone, UNESCO Assistant Director General for Culture of UNESCO. It is my great pleasure to welcome viewers to this online meeting organized in partnership with CISAC to discuss the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on artists and the creative sector. Today's meeting brings together 6 renowned artists from around the world: Jean-Michel Jarre, Yasmina Khadra, Diya Khan, Angélique Kidjo, Luis Puenzo, and Nina Obiljan-Korzinek. I will moderate the discussion and ask our panelists 2 rounds of questions on the impact of COVID-19 on their artistic discipline. At the end of this dialogue, there will be a 20-minute question and answer. If you would like to ask questions to our panelists, please use the chat function. Our technical moderators will select questions and share them with us. A quick message to our panelists: please keep your cameras turned on and don't forget to check your microphone is turned on when you speak. I would like to add that, like many people around the world, we at UNESCO are getting used to organizing events online. The live captioning and translation tools we are using are not perfect, so please be patient if there are technical glitches. Also, before beginning this debate, I would like to emphasize that as an international organization, UNESCO supports multilingualism and diversity. All our meetings are held in several languages. Therefore, I would like to apologize the fact that our debate will be held only in English. As you all know, we are adapting to this challenging time, and unfortunately, we are not yet at the point to have simultaneous interpretation to this online meeting. It will come, I am sure, but at the time being, we have to work with the tools that we have available. Thank you in advance for your understanding. Before we begin this debate, it is my privilege to welcome UNESCO Director General Audrey Azoulay to deliver some opening remarks. Madame la Directrice Générale, vous avez le floor.
Gracias, Ernesto. Bonjour à tous. Hello, salam, welcome. I am Audrey Azoulay, the Director General of UNESCO, which is the United Nations Organization for Education, Culture, Science, Communication and Information. I'm very happy to be here with you today to launch this debate. We've called it the ResiliArt Online Debate on the occasion of World Art Day. And it is organized with CISAC that I would like to thank, and to thank its president, Jean-Michel Jarre, who's also a goodwill ambassador of UNESCO and a very active one. And I would like to thank CISAC for joining forces with UNESCO for this conference, and of course the rest of our panelists. Although I cannot see you or hear you, I know that there are hundreds of people, artists, cultural professionals, members of the public from around the world that have joined us today. Why this debate? We felt that in these unprecedented times, with a large part of the world under lockdown, it was important to give the floor and to hear the voices of artists. This is something which is always true, but it's even more true today as the world faces the COVID-19 pandemic. This crisis is unprecedented by its size, because of its global scales, and because also of the impact of the lockdown measures that have totally disrupted our social lives, economic, political, cultural lives. In response to the crisis, UNESCO has taken actions in all of its fields covered by our mandate. First, we've launched a global education coalition to support the 1.5 billion of learners that are out of school because of school closures. We've also launched a dialogue to defend science, investment in science, science as global public good, and support scientific cooperation, better access to data, better access to results of research in the movement that we call the open science movement. We've also tried to support the fight against rumors, fake news, disinformation. But in these unstable and uncertain times, we also need to look to the things that unite us, the things that show us the world in all of its variety, and we need for that art and artists. We've all seen that there is, despite or maybe because of the lockdown, an even greater appetite for culture shown around the world. A lot of creativity, a lot of energy, a lot of appetite to learn, to listen to the voices of artists, an appetite for creation. This period has also shown for half of the population which is online, which is connected, that we are going in a historic movement with culture moving even more online and with the GAFA firms becoming even more key players in the cultural sector. But the crisis also reveals some fragilities. The lockdown has reminded us that artistic creation is fragile, it's precarious. The effect on the creative processes and the ecosystem that underpins it at the root of cultural diversity. All the elements of the ecosystems are at risk. Theaters, museums, bookshops, concert halls, production companies, broadcasters, festivals, cinemas, and much more. And also at the very root of this ecosystem, authors and artists. It also means that an entire segment of the global economy, the jobs that this segment creates, the attractivity of cities and countries that have chosen culture as a driver for sustainable development, are also at risk. And this is a real risk. There has been in the past decades of efforts put into developing public policies to structure a sector that ensures that all artists' voice can be heard. So today's meeting, which is taking place on World Art Day and opening our global initiative that we have named ResiliArt, aim to put these questions at the top of the international agenda and not at the end. We need to ensure that these issues are given the place they deserve, the space they deserve in the political and social discussions that will shape the world after the crisis. As an international intergovernmental organization, we can be a platform to evaluate the impact and the responses to the crisis for the cultural sector, a platform for sharing experience and learning from others. We can also provide guidance for public policies across the world. And we will share this agenda next week as we will host an online meeting of culture ministers from around the world so that they can share their observation and experience. But first of all, we wanted to hear the point of view of the artists. And I'm very, very grateful for their participation to this conference and very looking forward to listening to them. Thank you very much. Over to you, Ernesto.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Directrice Générale. Thank you very much. And before introducing our distinguished panelists, I would like to start by offering some additional context for the inaugural ResiliArt debate. As the Director General mentioned, the current health crisis has enormous global ramification for the creative sector. The pandemic has affected the entire creative value chain, creation, production, distribution, and also access, and considerably weakening the professional, social, and economic status of artists and cultural professionals. While the unprecedented disruption to cultural life and livelihoods caused by COVID-19 is evident, the pandemic has also revealed and magnified the creative industry's pre-existing volatility. To help us making sense of the impact of COVID-19 on culture, I am also pleased to announce that we are launching at UNESCO the Culture and COVID-19 Impact and Response Tracker. This weekly newsletter shares the latest information on the impact of COVID-19 on culture across the globe, as well as the local, national, and regional efforts being undertaken in response. To read the tracker, you can visit to the UNESCO Cultural COVID-19 Response webpage. In addition to our celebration of World Art Day today, this year also marks the 40th anniversary of the 1980 UNESCO recommendation on the status of the artist. Many principles stipulated in the status of the artist remain more relevant today than ever. UNESCO is organizing this ResiliArt debate in cooperation with CISAC, the International Confederation of Society of Authors and Composers. I would like to thank CISAC and its partner for positively responding to our urgent invitation to organize this debate. We would also thank our media partner, the Art newspaper, who will help us take this movement forward. And now it is my pleasure to introduce our 6 panelists today. First of all, Jean-Michel Jarre, bienvenue. He's a French composer, performer, and producer. He's renowned worldwide as one of the pioneers of electronic music and has sold over 80 million albums to date. His groundbreaking vision and work in the art of live performance and technology opened the path for today's culture of international music festivals. He is actually the president of the International Confederation of Society of Authors and Composers, CISAC, which has 232 members in more than 120 countries and represents 4 million creators from all regions of the world and from all artistic fields. He has been an active UNESCO Goodwill Ambassador for close to 3 decades. Jean-Michel, bienvenue.
Merci, thank you very much. Happy to be around.
Great. The next one is Dia Khan. He's a critically acclaimed music producer, composer, Emmy and Peabody Award-winning documentary film director, and human rights activist, known for her outspoken support of women's rights, freedom of expression, and peace. She's the founder of Fuse, a media and arts company that puts women, minorities, and third culture kids at the heart of telling their own stories. In 2016, she became the first UNESCO Goodwill Ambassador for artistic freedom and creativity. Welcome, Dia.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Angélique Kidjo is a Grammy Award and Charles Cross Academy winner from Benin, known for the diversity of her musical influences, the originality of her music, and her humanitarian efforts. Nicknamed the first African diva by Time magazine, she has 14 solo albums to her credit. She was named one of the 50 icons of the African continent by the BBC and one of the 100 most remarkable women in the world by The Guardian. A Goodwill Ambassador for UNICEF and Oxfam, she has also created her own charitable foundation, Batonga, to support girls' education in Africa. She is one of the 4 vice presidents of CISAC. Bonjour, ma chère Angélique.
Bonjour. I'm happy to be here.
Yasmina Kadra is an Algerian writer, twice consecrated by the French Academy and honored with several literary awards. He has seen his book adapted for the theater and in comic strips. He is the most famous Algerian writer of the last 20 years. His work has been translated into some 50 languages, and several of his books, such as The Attack, What the Day Owns the Night, and Swallows of Kabul, have been brought to the screen. His latest literary publication, Khalil, won the Grand Prix of Literary Association in 2018. Un plaisir d'être avec vous, Yasmine. Luis Puenzo is an Argentinian film director, screenwriter, and producer. Most of his films offer probing, metaphorical portraits of characters and relationships in the face of larger sociopolitical issues. His most celebrated film, La Historia Oficial, won an Academy Award for Best Foreign Film and the Cannes Film Festival Prize of the jury. He is today the president of INCA, the Argentinian National Institute of Cinema and Audiovisual Arts. Bienvenido, Luis. Un gusto tenerlo. And finally, Nina Oblighen-Korsinek is an Croatian violinist, currently serving as the Minister of Culture in the cabinet of Andrej Plenković. She has more than 25 years of professional experience in the field of international relations, culture, and media policy. Prior to her appointment as the Minister of Culture in 2016, she was working as a researcher associate in the Institute for Development and International Relations in Zagreb. Welcome, dear Nina.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation.
Great. So thanks to all of you for agreeing to take part in this live event with us today. And we will begin the debate by asking a question to each of our panelists. And after 2 rounds of questions, we'll have time for a question and answer with the public. If you would like to ask a question, please remember to use the chat function so that we can know. Let's begin. Jean-Michel, je m'adresse à vous. You are famous for taking live music out of our traditional concert halls and into the great outdoors to huge audiences, which has earned you 3 Guinness World Records for the largest gathering of people ever assembled at a concert. The current confinement measures have had an enormous impact on the music sector. CISAC's figures indicate that music used in concert and public performance alone accounts for 30% of all global royalty collection to music authors. What effect do you think the lockdown measures will have for artists' ability to connect with their public, both in the short and also in the medium term? Jean-Michel.
Yes, thank you for asking. First of all, I really would like to thank UNESCO and to organize this first debate and join with alongside the CISAC, because I think and we all hope I hope that this debate could and may encourage everybody in every country to do the same kind of debate, and then as Audrey Azoulay, the Director General of UNESCO, just shared with us the idea of UNESCO being a guidance and helping to convey our voice as artists. And of course, the COVID-19, as you said, the COVID-19 crisis is not just a health threat, but it has a huge impact on our economy, as we all know, but it is also a dark cloud over not only music, but our culture in general. And when we people are in confinement, as we all are now, and we turn to art, to books, to films, to visual art, these are our escapes from the difficult reality more than ever in those days. And we are listening to music and to TV. I mean, the cultural sector is probably the most consumed sector with food. And if we don't take care now about protecting art and culture, they will be suffering for generations. And the crisis brought to a halt large parts of the creative sector. There's no live concerts, as we were saying with Angelique Kidjo, no music played in public, but also no theater, no cinema, no museums and exhibitions. And this situation threatens to send a generation of creators into poverty and destroy one of the most dynamic and entrepreneurial sectors of the economy. And also, you see, on the other hand, with the right strategies by governments, invest in, promote, and defend creative communities, our sector can be an engine for society's recovery. We are not a problem. Culture is not a problem. It's also a resilient solution. And what we need is for governments to understand that our sector is not only extremely fragile, but also extremely important for the after confinement. And and we need immediate support in order to survive. And I think our sector were the first to be hit and could be the last to come out of this crisis. Of course, we should not forget the fact that before anything else, people are starving all over in the world. And this is, of course, the first priority. But just behind that, just after that, I mean, culture is also food for brain, food for the heart. And we should address this emergency request, not only to governments, but as the Director General said, as musicians, but also as filmmakers, writers, and painters, and graphic artists. We have to address a very clear message to GAFAM. I mean, these big internet giants are making money on the back of the virus these days, more than ever. And apart from, and I hope we'll have this discussion later on with everybody else, but apart from the copyrights issues we can have with all these big giants of internet, there is an emergency, an ethic and a moral attitude that they should give back. They should give back the money, the huge amount of money they are making at the moment by providing our content. There is a kind of absolutely unfair situation between big companies making a lot of money these days, every minute, every second, and at the same time, I mean, providing content created by people, by us, by artists, starving because they don't have any perspective. Because the crisis today is not only dramatic for tomorrow morning, it's dramatic for the next month, for the next year. And if we don't take care, we are talking about millions of artists, technicians who are going just to stop creating, to stop living. So thank you to UNESCO and of course to all the members of CISAC to convey this strong message. And what can be done is the reason why of this debate. We can talk forever about how dramatic the situation is and how dramatic the planet is going through. But I think what could be very useful is being really practical about what can be done and what we can ask to the governments and to everybody who can help artists, and specifically in emerging countries such as South Africa and South America and some part of Asia, to try to adjust and help this very dramatic situation.
Merci Jean-Michel. Diakan, a lot of your recent work focuses on challenging prejudice through individual human stories. The current crisis is affecting independent artists and creators disproportionately. What are your observations on the impact of the crisis on this group particularly? Is there a threat to the diversity of cultural expressions?
Absolutely. First of all, I would like to just echo what Jean-Michel said. I'm very, very grateful to get to participate in this and to think together how we all move out of this together and how we confront some of the challenges, not only that we have right now. This crisis is something that's going to stay with us, I think, for a very long time. We're going to be seeing the ramifications of this after the crisis ends for many people. I think our sectors will be struggling and suffering for a very long time to come, and actually put a lot of creators into poverty, quite frankly. So yes, I do think that it has a tremendous impact. Just for me personally, I'm sitting in the US right now. I'm stuck here. I've been spending the last 15 months here working on 2 documentary films. And as you can imagine, that's now stopped. And, I think one of the things that I struggle with a lot, even before this crisis hit, is the way that the arts are perceived and the way the creators and artists are actually viewed by our governments, by even our broader society. To me, I think part of the reason we struggle to sort of underline the significance of why our sectors matter, I think, is because so many countries and politicians, I think, tend to view art as a luxury rather than a human necessity. And I think, Jean-Michel, you said this the other day, it is like oxygen. The arts really are that. And I think what this crisis really exposes to us is that after food, like you said, what is keeping people's inner lives, people's emotional sanity, is them tapping into the arts of whatever form. And I think the importance, we cannot underestimate the importance and understate the importance of why we need the arts, and so why it matters that our sector be kept alive. It is what connects us as human beings. It is what provides us the escape. It is what unites us. It is what provides hope. It is that space of empathy. It is what it means to be human. And I think the response of creative people has always shown that, but the perspective and the way that the arts is viewed is always in a sort of degraded manner. I think workers within this field do not, under normal circumstances even, enjoy the same levels of protections and the same rights that many workers in other sectors do. So I think now we're even more vulnerable because our professions are not viewed as necessary, even though this crisis tells you that it is what is keeping our sanity, as I say, our hearts intact as individuals. And also after this crisis, what will unite us, what will bring us together, what will connect us to each other again? Of course, technology is wonderful, but what is it that we're enjoying through that technology? So I think it's very important to sort of remind ourselves of why art matters and why we need to protect it and why it is so desperately crucial that we don't allow millions of creators to go into poverty and the entire ecosystem that surrounds them. I run a tiny little production company. I pay taxes, they have families, they have children, they have to eat. And I'm scraping the bottom of the barrel just within a few months to be able to bridge this gap that's now happening. And I'm not saying that to say I'm in such a terrible position and I'm in such a terrible state. I'm saying that to say that I'm actually one of the fortunate ones. I actually am in a better position than most of my colleagues around the world. And I'm struggling and limping and stumbling. So I can only imagine what our comrades around the world are going through. And I think this is why this moment, all of us, whatever corner of the world that we're sitting in, as artists, as creators, it is a time for us to unite and speak with one voice and ensure that our governments and the international community takes what we have to say and our struggles seriously and include us in their packages and in their solutions and in their bailouts. So yeah, I'll stop for now.
That's great, Dia. We are so pleased to hear all your reflection about it. Now, je me tourne vers Angélique Kidjo. You are a strong advocate for human rights, author rights, and women's rights in general. In what way do you think the pandemic has impacted singers and musicians? Are women affected differently from their male peers?
Well, thank you for having me. One of the things that is I want to bring first and foremost at the front here is that we are in this crisis so vulnerable because the system we've been living in has never given us the same right as other people around the world as artists. I come from a continent where artists has no status. So let me speak about Africa, for example. Till the technology allows young musicians from Africa to be known and to make their music heard around the world, not one government in Africa understand the protection of the artist. They don't see it as luxury, they see it as amusement. There's no respect for artists in Africa whatsoever, male or female. Female is even worse. At 12 years old, I started singing, I was 6 years old. When I turned 12, they started calling me prostitute because I was singing. That's what we go through when you're a young girl to want to do music or any form of art. You are ostracized by the society you live in, and there's no protection for African artists. This crisis is going to be worse in the culture in general in Africa. And without African music, without African culture, there's no culture because we are all African. And we keep on forgetting that if we don't protect the rights of the artists, we're talking about the GAFA. Why do we become vulnerable to the GAFA? Because our government around the world don't protect us. It's because they have more money to override the power of government. We people have given the GAFA the right to take our creation away from us to do whatever they want with it. Because they are providing a platform, they have the right not to pay us at all. So this crisis not only is putting women in danger in culture, but women in general. Violence against women is rising everywhere. Before it was only Africa that it was pointed. Now the whole world is realizing that it's not only African people women that goes through domestic violences, it's everybody. We artists has been the ambassador of our culture, of our language, of the world. We are the bridge between everybody's worries and everybody's joy. And the thing that is really important for us to bring here is when in the way we have to rethink with this pandemic coming up, we have to rethink how we protect artists in the way that even in the COVID, another COVID coming again, we don't know how we're going to be living the next generation coming, is that we have to have a status everywhere we go as ambassadors of art. All of us, doesn't matter what kind of art we do. Unless the government, before we start putting money on the table, both have to come together. Protection of copyright, protection of artists. This music business, this art business in which we are, is male dominated. There's so much sexism in the work that we do. And sometimes I struggle to understand, because my father always used to tell me, intelligence has no gender. So how come we have come so far to create this weakness in which we are? And this COVID-19 is hitting all of us. Without concert, I can't live. I'm holding on. How long I'm gonna hold on? And this being on stage is my oxygen. Being on stage telling story is my sanctuary. And here I am, grounded in my home and not seeing much of support of any government talking about how do we come back to do concert. Everybody's talking about reopen the economy. We are part of the economy. The amount of money that we bring to the table is really important. It's not peanuts. So we need to come together within what we're going to ask our leaders. Not only words. Words are easy. Action are more expensive. This is the time when the GAFA is making so much money while we are grounded. At the end of it, in between it, to send a huge message. Enough is enough. You are not government. You cannot take the right of our artists, and we have to be protected, and they have to pay us. For now, I will leave the floor open for other questions if people are there, but we need to think about how we protect every artist around the globe, not only the rich country artists that have the means to protect the artists. We need to campaign also for the developing countries, for them to step up to the plate to protect the artists of the countries.
Thank you, Angélique. It was very clear that you are asking to take action, so we understand it very well. Yasmina Kadra, with the digitalization of creative works and with a lot of people facing confinement, is there
Vous pouvez pas parler français, s'il vous plaît?
Je vous pose la question en français. Yasmina, avec la digitalisation des œuvres créatives, beaucoup de monde se voit confronté pendant ce confinement. Est-ce que vous voyez quelque chose de positif pour l'industrie du livre? Est-ce que les auteurs, les écrivains vulnérables en ce moment sont plus affectés que d'autres créateurs? Est-ce que vous croyez qu'il y a effectivement un encouragement des gens pour cette expérience et de trouver de nouvelles façons de la littérature online? Parlez-nous un peu de votre réflexion sur la crise.
Je pense que la question se pose pour tout le monde, mais il n'y a pas les mêmes réponses. Les réponses diffèrent d'un continent à l'autre, d'une civilisation à l'autre. Moi, je trouve que la culture, c'est, contrairement à d'autres secteurs industriels, est aussi un secteur qui crée l'emploi et qui crée la richesse. Mais dans les pays plus ou moins attentifs à ce support, cette culture, elle devient vraiment un fonds de commerce très intéressant. Mais en Afrique, par exemple, dans les pays un peu obscurantistes, cette culture est complètement, ce support industriel est complètement négligé. Alors que normalement, quand on essaie d'interroger nos journées, notre quotidien, notre vie, on s'aperçoit quand même que les prophètes sur Terre, ce sont justement les musiciens, les comédiens, les écrivains, ce sont ces gens-là qui nous apportent un peu de lumière, qui mettent un peu de lumière dans la banalité de nos jours. Or, dans certains pays, ces gens-là sont considérés comme des pestiférés. Parce que pour certains gouvernements, ils représentent l'éveil à la conscience et l'émancipation des peuples. Et ces gouvernements ne souhaiteraient pas voir leur peuple forcir avec la culture, avec le savoir, et être heureux. Donc, la culture, elle se doit d'être protégée à tous les niveaux. Pour revenir un peu à la numérisation des œuvres, oui, c'est un support supplémentaire pour élargir l'audience d'un livre. Mais si ce support n'est pas protégé, eh ben, c'est aussi une catastrophe pour l'écrivain. C'est bon pour le livre, mais c'est une catastrophe pour l'écrivain parce qu'il ne faut pas oublier qu'il y a le piratage aussi. Donc, il faudrait peut-être que le gouvernement pense à protéger ce support, comme le fait Netflix. Il y a une application, vous pouvez acheter, mais vous ne pouvez jamais télécharger gratuitement ou pirater quoi que ce soit. Donc, le numérique doit savoir sauvegarder cette générosité extraordinaire qui est le livre, comme pour la musique et comme pour le cinéma. Bon, les écrivains, est-ce qu'ils sont plus vulnérables que les artistes? Je ne pense pas. Parce qu'un artiste, il a besoin de tellement de choses, il a besoin d'une technique, enfin d'un groupe, d'un orchestre, il y a d'équipements et tout, mais un écrivain, il a besoin juste d'une plume et d'une rame de papier. Donc, il n'est pas aussi vulnérable que les artistes. Mais par ailleurs, il est moins peut-être il est plus vulnérable dans sa propre vie. C'est-à-dire que la musique, elle peut toujours permettre à un musicien de vivre, mais pas toujours le livre. Le livre ne permet pas à beaucoup d'écrivains de vivre. Donc, il faudrait aussi songer à créer un statut particulier pour l'écrivain, afin que cette générosité ne soit pas tout simplement, ne se fasse pas au détriment de sa propre vie à lui. Je crois qu'il y a pas mal de mesures, bien sûr, qu'il faudrait faire, mais quelquefois, quand je pense, par exemple, à mon pays, l'Algérie, ou à certains pays africains, parce que j'ai beaucoup voyagé en Afrique aussi, je connais pas mal de pays, je trouve que quand même, il faudrait que l'Unesco essaye de se tenir constamment du côté des artistes et des écrivains qui sont marginalisés, vilipendés, disqualifiés, défigurés, calomniés, et surtout, ils sont voués à toutes les hégémonies. Donc, oui, c'est un programme extraordinaire qui nous attend, et cette pandémie-là n'a fait que lever le voile sur cette injustice. Parce que, voilà, l'écrivain, d'abord, a beaucoup de difficultés à toucher un maximum de public. La musique, c'est une. D'ailleurs, j'ai écrit dans Dieu n'habite pas la Havane que la musique est le seul talent que Dieu envie aux hommes. C'est quelque chose d'extraordinaire, la musique. Moi-même, je ne peux pas commencer à écrire sans passer au moins une demi-heure à écouter de la musique. Mais elle est à la portée de tout le monde, donc elle est diffusée partout. Mais un livre est plus exigeant. Un livre, il faut lire pendant des heures et des heures, il faut suivre quelque chose qui pourrait nous dépasser. Il y a aussi le problème de la langue. On n'a pas tous les outils pour accéder à une langue dans sa plénitude. Donc, oui, l'UNESCO devrait peut-être renforcer l'écrivain dans ses pérégrinations à travers les esprits, à travers les peuples. Alors, moi, je trouve que c'est vrai qu'aujourd'hui, quand même, quand on est quadmuré chez nous, on est confiné, on regarde le soleil qui nous fait des pieds de nez. De derrière la vitre, c'est beau et tout, on ne peut pas sortir, on ne peut pas aller où on veut. Donc, d'un seul coup, c'est qui sont nos meilleurs alliés aujourd'hui, qui sont nos meilleurs compagnons, qui essayent de nous soutenir, qui nous aident à tenir. Ce sont les artistes, c'est la musique, c'est le cinéma, c'est le livre. Alors, il faudrait que peut-être que l'humanité, les gouvernements du monde entier sachent que sans ces acteurs-là, la vie ne serait que platitude. On mourrait d'ennui, même au paradis. S'il n'y a pas de musique au paradis, le paradis serait un enfer. Donc, il faudrait peut-être que les gouvernements pensent un petit peu à cette personne qui apporte un peu de lumière dans la grisaille de nos jours.
Parfait, Yasmina. Merci beaucoup. We'll get to... if you allow me only to make a resume in English. Yasmina told us that culture is a sector that employs many people and creates economic opportunity. It needs to be supported in this time of crisis. Digital tools are good, but only if copyright is respected. It is essential to put measurements in place to make sure that artists get paid fairly. Writers are not as vulnerable to the current crisis as performing artists, since they can write despite confinement measures. However, few writers can live from their writing. Most of them are economically vulnerable. Their social and economic rights must be respected. UNESCO mission is to reinforce the right of these artists, and artists are the ones who allow us to get through the crisis. giving us inspiration and hope. Governments need to support them. Well, that was our new advocacy for the policymakers. Very well. Now I go to Luis Puenzo. As a filmmaker, you know better than anyone the great variety of professionals who are involved in making a single movie, from set designer to makeup artist to audio technician. How is the current crisis affecting the whole ecosystem of the film industry? What are the current and future financial consequences of the health crisis on film professionals? Luis, tienes el escenario.
Gracias, Ernesto. Bueno, como bien sabes, as you know, in Latin America we have a very, very strong cinema. In our countries, in Argentina and Chile, but in all Latin America, we have in the artistic side, I mean, all the creative talents that works in each movie are very strong and very well developed in Latin America. But in the other side, I mean, in the distribution, we were in a very big crisis before this pandemic. Before this crisis, we already have a crisis to show our works, our movies to other countries, and even in each country in Latin America to see the movies that we make in other countries, very close. We were in a crisis that became very strong in the times that the streaming takeover of the movies. This new situation was already something that we were watching very carefully and trying to work, trying to find new solutions. I mean, now I am part of the artist. I am a director and writer and producer, but now I am a functionary. I am the president of the Institute of Cinematography, and we were working very, very carefully this new situation when this year the pandemic came, and now it's a crisis over another one. So I think in this moment we have like in all over the world, with all the shootings are stopped, and the technicians and the actors are in their homes with no work, with no money for their own lives, and it's a very, very difficult situation. And my personal impression is that we will take very long. I don't know if we'll not change our jobs forever. I don't think this will be the same after the end of the pandemic. There is still this impression in our people, in the workers, that this is something that will go like it came, but it's not so sure. We can't believe that nothing will be the same in relation with the movies. Now the theaters are closed and perhaps will open in few months. Perhaps in this year will be the theaters open again, but still will be not the same. I don't think for the people who watch cinema, not only for the people who make cinema, will be not the same. And we are prepared for that. We are trying to figure out how will be the change. What probably movies will be more close than to the books, to the novels, to something more private that is now. And perhaps the streaming, we were a couple of years ago fighting against the streaming, and now we think that perhaps will be a tool that we will need to recreate our profession and our cultural industry, and the work for the authors, for the directors, for the producers, for the technicians and the actors. I think probably the experience of the movies will be more private than used to be, and we are trying to be prepared for that.
Gracias, Luis. Thank you very much for these reflections. Now I give the floor to Nina. Well, you are in the unique position of being both an artist, you are a violinist, but also a politician. You are the Minister of Culture of Croatia. Among the measures that have been taken around the world to support artists and cultural professionals during this crisis, which ones do you think will have the most impact in the short, medium, and we hope in the long term?
Thank you, Ernesto, and hello once again to everybody, and thank you for introducing me as an artist, even though I have never worked as a professional artist. I'm trained as an artist, but I've been most of my life in research about cultural policies, so close to arts and close to artists. First of all, thanks to all the panelists so far for their impressive and sometimes even emotional insights into a situation in which we are found, which is really unprecedented. And we have to say that none of the key stakeholders in this have been prepared. The artists have not been prepared. We as the politicians and those who are responsible for cultural policies were not prepared, because simply you can't be prepared for a situation like this. And suddenly, within a week, the whole environment in which the artists have been creating and in which we have been putting in place measures to support the arts has been fundamentally changed. Only if you think of the principles that we have all cherished and supported, the mobility, co-productions, touring, exchange, literary translations. I mean, we are dealing with this crisis in a way that we are closing our borders and immediately cutting any ties that have been existing and that have been enriching our cultural lives for such a long time. And then, of course, within our national borders, we are closed in our homes or offices, and everything that was normal and until a few weeks ago is not normal anymore. So we, as the politicians who are responsible for all walks of life, we are struggling to put in place measures which are going to assist different sectors survive this crisis. So this has also been the case with cultural policies. And what I can, in a way, observe when I'm trying to compare the reactions in different countries across the world, and especially in Europe, because at the moment Croatia also holds the presidency of the EU, and last week I convened a meeting of the European Ministers of Culture to discuss the responses so far and how we see what we have done. It is quite evident that the response and the effectiveness of the response and the strength of the response very much depended on how elaborated system of support for culture and arts have been. In other words, the countries that have had a robust support system in terms of cultural policies are better equipped to respond to the crisis, while those countries in which cultural policies and support for the arts or status of the artists have not been in such a good position, I would say that the cultural sector is even more vulnerable. So if you look at the European cultural policies responses, we have more or less all countries put in place similar measures that went towards support for individual artists, for freelancers, for independent artists, but then also different grant schemes and microcredits and support measures for SMEs in the field of culture and creative industries. But I'm well aware that in many countries, there is a limitation to what can be put in place in circumstances such as these ones. But to try to look a little bit ahead, because in your question you asked about the medium and long-term responses. I don't think that anyone, literally anyone at this particular moment could try to give an answer of where we are going, because there is this fundamental problem for all of us. We really don't know how long this is going to last. So whatever we try to put in place as scenarios, there is this element that is so uncertain that prevents us from putting in place any kind of really systematic approach that would say, this is where we are with the culture sector now, and this is where we want to go. But what this crisis certainly has showed us, first of all, and the number of speakers before me evoked this, is a question of the protection of the status of the artist. And in particular, the regime of copyright, because now when everything is moving online, when all the artists are sharing their work online, we are in some ways also sending a wrong message. We are, yes, you are as artists sharing this online for free, but this is the only revenue for the artists. And this is why, in parallel to these really positive examples of how we are keeping our audiences and public at large sane, I would say in this particular moment, we have to send a message that the protection of copyright and the fair remuneration of the artist who is creating should be in the center. The second is a question, how can we improve the remuneration of all creators in this digital environment? But even more important for me, and I'm really struggling day and night trying to figure this one out, is can we try to envisage where we are going to be in this new normal? Because obviously, even when the measures will start to be looser in certain countries, and we will slowly be coming back with some economic activities, for some aspects of the arts and culture, in particular performing arts, it will take a longer time until we get back. So what do we do in this new normal? What do we do with concerts, with theater, with audiences, with this live interaction? And I think this is something where we need a collective reflection. Just to finish, one of the previous speakers were talking about this division between understanding of what art is, art as a luxury versus art, which is like an oxygen for each individual, for us as a society. And I think that this ResiliArt initiative should also be used also by us politicians who are advocating for arts and culture, but also for the sector as general, to say, yes, look at what is happening. Today we depend on the food when we are closed in our homes, but we also depend on what we can consume in terms of creative work. And we shouldn't forget, we also depend on independent and credible media. Otherwise, we would be killed by another horror, which would be the sharing of the fake news. So the culture and creative sector is so vital, and yet because of its specificity, so vulnerable. And there is a lot of work nationally, but also internationally, to help us to bring this, to build this solidarity, so that we can work on improving the position jointly.
Ernesto, we can't hear you. We can't hear you. Ernesto, we can't hear you.
Sorry. I was so impacted by what Nina was talking that she put some of the questions that we are posing every day to us. So it was great to hear in her position to reflect the position also of what you are thinking all together. And now I go to Jean-Michel back. As a question, as we heard, what should governments be doing for culture and creative industry now, in addition to emergency measures that we are seeing that are putting on the table? Brought more attention to the need for copyright reform? What is the most pressing concern that you feel as CESAC president that members have today? Can you answer us?
I think what can be done, I mean, more than ever, I think what we should do is to invent a new economy for the cultural sector in the digital world. Because we see this kind of increasing gap during this crisis between some giants of the internet, as we said, the GAFA, I mean, making a lot of money on the back of the virus. And at the same, I mean, actually providing and giving to the planet our content, the content created by people who are actually starving. So that it's another proof how the digital world should be adjusted in terms of the economy for the cultural sector. And I would like to, you know, to go back to a few things that has been said just previously. First of all, I think our motto for this crisis is a motto that something that Audrey Azoulay, the Director General, said: culture as an engine for recovery. Because I think I mean, I love this idea of ResiliArt. Art and culture is going to be the resilient link between everybody on the planet, wherever we are. And also, Dia said something very important, that in lots of countries, culture sometimes is considered as secondary. Like if we were almost ashamed of ourselves because we know that people are starving on the planet, that we should not even complain. And this is not true, because it's time to restore, as we are restoring and taking consciousness about the importance of doctors and nurses doing a fantastic work all over the planet. I mean, the artists, the technicians around the artists, all the ecosystem of culture is also one basic of democracy. What makes the difference between democracy and chaos is actually the rules, the right regulations, and the respect for starting respect of your own culture. And I would like to comment also quickly about what Angelique and Yasmina said on two different ways. That unfortunately in some governments and some dictatorship, because the voice of artists is considered as a threat in a dark way, the virus is quite a good news, because it's weakening the cultural sector of these countries. So we have also to help these countries even more, because it's in our own interest as artists, but as citizens of the world, to allow artists of everywhere, from every country, to be able to express themselves. I mean, you know, in my early days, my first album, as you probably know, it was called Oxygen. And I think to continue to give oxygen, we need oxygen. And how can we do this? I think we first of all should address of course, the fact that the government should create special measures to help rebuild after the crisis, emergency funds and programs, special loans, because creators, as Angelique was saying, we're all like small businesses, and policies on investments in the cultural sector are important. Tax breaks for the self-employed creators, social security, all this. But beyond that, I think we should also ask governments to create a special tax to GAFA everywhere. I mean, now it's enough that these people are not only paying artists, but on top of it, they are not paying tax in lots of countries. And this period is showing us more than ever, is showing the planet how unfair the situation is, and that has to stop. So either they understand the situation, but we are not asking for charity. We're just asking about just a fair remuneration. We are actually we are virtual shareholders of all these companies. You know, as I said, sometimes in a smartphone, the smart part is us, and more than ever, it's us, because everybody is looking at screens at the moment, and it's our content. And our content should be, we should invent again a new economy in this digital world. And I would like to finish quickly and to leave the floor to all our friends here, is also that we should not forget that, and it's time for governments to hear this, that the creative industries are more important in terms of jobs. CISAC have been a very interesting survey last year. In the world, creative industries are more important in terms of jobs than the car industry or the fashion business. So we are not a problem, we are the solution. More countries are going to help the cultural sector, the more they will create also this resilient field for everybody else after the crisis, because the crisis is hard for all of us at the moment, but it's going to hit the cultural sector even more in 2021, and we should avoid that 50% of our culture would disappear, because it's what's going to happen if we don't do anything. This is the reason why it's an absolute emergency.
It was very clear that diversity is also in danger with the situation that we are living right now. So it's very important what you said. Dia, your project Sisterhood, which is a digital magazine spotlighting the diverse voices of women of Muslim heritage, has published many stories and articles on the impact of COVID-19 on individuals and communities. What constraints are artists from marginalized groups facing during this crisis? What do you think that governments can do to support them?
Well, so marginalized groups are already in a vulnerable position even before a crisis like this hits. So what this crisis does, that it just strips people, and many of our colleagues actually on the ground in across various regions that we work with, a lot of women artists and activists, is that they're finding themselves in even more vulnerable position, whether it is becoming targets of domestic violence within the confinements of their own homes. I mean, these are women and girls that already lacked access and the ability to participate within the arts and creative sectors, which is why we set up this project to begin with. And now that they're utterly bound to their homes and also bound to circumstances that are potentially abusive or dangerous for them, that's a huge concern, I think. I think one of the other things that we've also started, or I've started hearing from a lot of our activists on the ground is, and I think some of the other speakers highlighted this as well, is that they're seeing tendencies within countries where artists, activists are viewed as a problem and are viewed as a threat to power, where artists are using their art as their source of activism, challenging corruption, challenging even what's going on now. A lot of governments are sort of using the crisis in a way as a cover for more abuses and for more suppression of artists and of dissenting voices within various communities. So I think marginalized communities, whether it's women, whether it's people of color, whether it is disabled individuals or any other, or indigenous people, for example, I think that this crisis is absolutely stripping bare the brutality and danger and risk to their survival in a way that wasn't perhaps visible to people before. So yeah, I think it's a huge challenge. And again, I think as part of the international community of artists, I think we have an obligation to ensure that we don't just get caught up in our rights and in our circumstances. I think we must not forget our colleagues around the world, and we must not forget that authoritarian regimes are utilizing this situation to suppress our comrades, and also that abusers within their house, not just the abuser that is in parliament, but the abusers in their own house is also trying to destroy these artists. So we must not forget it, and we must do whatever we can to raise awareness of it, and then also mobilize whatever support that we can to ensure that we reduce the risks that our fellow colleagues face.
Thank you. And now I understand why you are a goodwill ambassador on these issues. It's very great to hear you. Angelique, the COVID-19 pandemic will undoubtedly contribute to the continued rise in digital income, as Jean-Michel was talking. But what about the other income streams for musicians? How can we ensure the fair remuneration of musicians, and especially musicians from Africa and other developing countries?
Well, first of all, we need to have an industry in place in Africa, and we don't right now. So the Society of Rights in Africa need help to build up from ground up and to strengthen, to understand that they have to be collecting the rights for their artists, not to put it in their pocket. That's one of the problems we have also. We're talking about the GAFA, but in Africa, we have that kind of abuse going on. And because the government don't have any status for the artists, there's no punishment. Even it's written in any law, there's nothing to do. And doing concert, traveling around the world, if you're an African artist and you live in Africa, to come to do any show in any developed country, you go through hell to get a visa. There's a lot of abuse going to any countries, Western country that you want to come to play. There's a lot of humiliation before you get your visa. So this COVID-19 gonna put more pressure when the border open. The discrimination we go through before gonna be multiplied by 10, 20 more, because that's the way it used to be. I mean, anything that happened in Africa, it's okay, nobody cares. As long as we die, nobody cares, it's okay. I mean, COVID-19 now, everybody, because it hits everybody we're talking about. When it was Ebola, we didn't have lockdown because it was in Africa. Malaria had been killing us for centuries. No one cares. This COVID-19, what is showing me as an African artist, and what I have been saying for my entire career, is that we are interconnected. That if we don't respect people's right to be, to speak, to be different, we will not succeed. And this COVID-19 is a reset button for me. It is giving us an opportunity in Africa to reset the button regarding African artists' rights. Our government needs to be pushed by UNESCO or whoever out there to provide protection for the collection of the right that come from outside, not to be used as their own expenses, because they don't have enough money to rent. The government should allow all those authors society to have a place they don't have to pay rent for a while, and then the money that comes goes straight to the artists. We're talking about poverty. There are African artists that I work with that only come and tour. They will tour at least 6 months, and it will allow them to put their kids to school and to feed their family for a year and a half. And they count every dime. Now all the borders are closed. What are we going to do? And when we open the borders, how politicians around the world gonna facilitate the art community to move freely and to work together and to create a bond? Because what we're talking about right now, I mean, the reason why I left my country, it was because of the communism dictatorship. And so for now, we all are thinking that dictatorship might be better. We have been step by step be funneled and tunneled into the sphere of China, because we do business with China. They have been step by step convincing us that dictatorship is okay. The right of the Chinese artists, who respect them. If you say something, you're killed or you put in jail. Huawei, all those artists having, and what do we do as a community of arts? We don't have a strong voice to be there and sustainably, I mean, put pressure on government that put artists in danger. As Dia was saying, I mean, the dictatorship are doing what they're doing because there's no accountability. There's no punishment whatsoever. And we have really allowed this that is happening to happen throughout years for artists and activists and indigenous people. And this COVID-19 is reset button, as I said. We can't be sitting here talking about our rights and the pain we're going through if we don't use this opportunity to push back on a dictatorship everywhere. Art, culture is not for sale. And your right is your right. And no one have the right to say it because I allow you to use my platform, you don't have to be paid. Mm-hmm. The fact for me that we are here talking about ResiliArt, we talk about resilience. The resilience can continue and change the world if there is an accountability on the other side. If what is good for us in Europe, in India, in Latin America, in North America is not good for the Chinese people, nor for the African people, we come back to ground zero when this finish. Because the right, my right is your right. I mean, human right is not just words. The first article of the human rights article is we are born equal in rights. Okay? But we keep on forgetting that all the time. Us artists, our storytelling, documentary, movie, is because we are a witness of what is going on our time. And we have told the story of abuse over and over again. The question we should ask ourselves is, why haven't we been able to stop violence against women, misogyny, child marriage, child pregnancy, human trafficking? I mean, you can tell me as an artist, we don't have to care. Oh, yes, we do. We have a responsibility because we are storytellers and we are the witness of our time, as I said. So we have minister here. Let us not think that we are powerless. Let's think about the power we have individually and collectively and how we put it together. For after the COVID-19, we don't go back to the same as usual. Things have to change completely.
Okay, I will do the reset button. So it's a great image to do the reset button. Yasmina, comme vous l'avez dit, en temps de paix et de crise, les écrivains ont toujours continué à travailler de toute façon. Mais comment vous croyez que les industries créatives en général peuvent se récupérer face à cette crise tellement globale et particulière? Et quel est le rôle des gouvernements? Yasmina, in time of peace and crisis, writers have always continued their craft. How do you think the book industry and other creative industry can recover from this particular crisis? And what is the role for the governments?
Vous savez, aucun malheur n'est éternel. Il faudrait bien qu'on revienne à la normale et que l'on soit restitué à nous-mêmes. Donc, il n'y a aucun problème pour le livre, pour la musique. Ils reviendront en force et rencontreront bien les mêmes problèmes. Mais qu'est-ce que l'industrie du livre? Son véritable socle. Le socle, c'est l'acheteur, c'est le client, c'est le lecteur. Donc, il faut, avant de penser à relancer l'industrie du livre, il faudrait peut-être construire ce lecteur potentiel. Or, par exemple, en Afrique, il n'y a pas beaucoup d'intérêt pour ce support-là, pour les lecteurs. Moi, je me rappelle, dans les années 60, 70, en Algérie, la lecture, c'était une compétition. C'était à qui lisait le plus ou le plus gros pavé. Il y avait quand même une espèce d'euphorie, un enthousiasme extraordinaire, enchanteur autour de la lecture. Aujourd'hui, en Algérie, le livre n'existe plus à l'école. Il n'existe plus à l'école. Les gens ne savent pas, ils savent même pas ce que c'est qu'un livre, enfin, par endroit. Et puis, le gouvernement n'encourage pas ça. À titre d'exemple, moi, j'ai fait des écoles un peu partout dans le monde. Partout où je vais, hein, je dirais que 80% des pays où je me suis rendu, j'ai rencontré des lycéens, que ce soit en Amérique latine, en Asie, en Europe, partout où je vais. Mais en Algérie, en 20 ans, je n'ai fait que 3 universités. En 20 ans. Et ces 10 dernières années, non, pas de rencontre avec les universitaires. Voilà, c'est terrible. Donc, moi, je pense qu'avant, il faudrait peut-être que les gouvernements se rendent compte de la nécessité pour eux de construire le lecteur de demain. Parce que le livre, c'est un soutien, c'est bon pour l'équilibre mental des peuples, le livre. C'est lui qui nous enseigne tout, qui nous permet de nous ouvrir aux autres, qui nous parle de nous-mêmes. Oh, parfois, on croit qu'on est en train de lire l'histoire de quelqu'un, d'un personnage. Or, on ne fait que refléter la nôtre à travers ses propres déboires, ses propres joies, ses propres peines. Donc, le livre, c'est lui qui m'a sauvé, donc il peut sauver le monde, le livre, à condition que les gouvernements songent à sauver leur propre peuple. Chez nous, le gouvernement essaie par tous les moyens de dissocier l'élite du peuple, d'abandonner le peuple à ses propres frustrations, alors que seuls les musiciens, seuls les acteurs, les véritables identités d'un peuple, c'est sa culture. Les véritables repères d'un peuple, ce sont ses chantres, ses poètes, ses chanteurs, ses musiciens, ses acteurs, ses écrivains. Or, dans nos gouvernements, dans nos pays, malheureusement, ce sont tout ce qui est censé apporter, je ne sais pas, une espèce de fierté à la nation, se doit d'être complètement vilipendé, disqualifié partout. Donc voilà, moi je pense qu'il faudrait que, je ne sais pas si je suis en train de prêcher dans le désert, bien que je vienne du désert lui-même, mais c'est un programme extrêmement difficile à mettre en place en Afrique. Parce que les gouvernants ne souhaiteraient pas avoir des peuples émancipés, conscients de leurs exigences, conscients de leurs ambitions et conscients surtout du sens ou de la direction qu'ils voudraient donner à leur pays. Mais on est là pour combattre. Moi, je n'ai jamais baissé les bras. Personnellement, avec mes éditeurs, j'ai tenu à ce que les droits pour l'Algérie me reviennent. Comme ça, mon éditeur algérois peut m'éditer en même temps qu'en France ou en Algérie et mettre le livre à la portée de n'importe qui. Donc, c'est une façon à moi de militer et d'accompagner l'engagement de tous ceux qui pensent qu'un peuple non cultivé est un peuple soumis à la décomposition. Voilà, donc c'est très difficile et l'UNESCO devrait peut-être, je ne sais pas, devrait trouver quelque chose pour aider ces écrivains. Ouais, vous savez, en France, on comprend, d'ailleurs, on voit, il y a des millions de livres qui sont vendus chaque année en France. Des millions de livres, avec le numérique ou pas. Le numérique, c'est peut-être parce que nous sommes en train d'entrer dans une ère cybernétique. Nous sommes déjà robotisés, enfin les générations de demain le seront, en tous les cas, ils sont formatés. Mais voilà, il faudrait peut-être que le livre devienne plus qu'une nécessité, il faut qu'il devienne le salut de l'humanité.
Ah, Yasmina.
Pour répondre à Yasmina, je peux dire quelque chose à Yasmina, c'est que tout ce qu'il dit, il a complètement raison. La culture libère les peuples. La première chose qu'une dictature qui s'installe fait, c'est détruire la culture. Parce que la culture libère le peuple. Nous, les Africains, que ce soit les Africains du Nord, de l'Est, du Centre, du Sud, ou de l'Est, on n'a jamais écrit notre histoire. On ne peut pas, nos dirigeants ne sont pas dans cette logique-là. Il est mieux que nous les écrivains africains que j'ai lus, beaucoup qui ont écrit des choses importantes, ne sont plus là aujourd'hui. La nouvelle génération ne les connaît même pas. Donc, je crois qu'en tant que travail universitaire, c'est par là qu'il faut commencer, dans les universités de nos pays, avec l'aide de l'Unesco. L'Unesco a énormément d'écrivains africains. Ils les connaissent, les mettre au travail pour qu'à l'école, dès la maternelle, on raconte leur histoire aux enfants. C'est que comme ça que petit à petit, on mettra fin à la dictature, parce que si on leur apprend qui ils sont, quand on est fier d'où on vient, on peut aller n'importe où. On ne sait peut-être pas où on va, mais on marche droit dans ses bottes. Nous, les Africains, on a un travail à faire. Les autres ne peuvent pas le faire pour nous. L'UNESCO peut être un partenaire pour ça, pour que nos histoires soient racontées par nous-mêmes et que quand on met le bouton Reset, qui est un programme ensemble avec l'aide de l'UNESCO, pour que dans les écoles, les livres qu'on apprend à l'école. Moi, quand j'étais à l'école, l'histoire de mon pays, je ne connaissais pas. L'histoire de mon continent, je ne connaissais pas. J'ai appris la Première Guerre mondiale, la Deuxième Guerre mondiale, l'Amérique, le grenier du monde et tout le bordel. Et on n'a jamais rien appris sur l'Afrique. Nous-mêmes, nos gouvernements sont nos propres ennemis. Donc, il faut commencer à la maternelle par leur raconter à la maison les histoires de nos ancêtres.
Angelique, thank you very much, and Yasmina also. I only want to remember you that UNESCO has published the 9 tomes of the history of Africa. That's part of the last 30 years of history that the UNESCO has been sharing. Only to translate for some of the viewers that are only speaking in English. Yasmina told us that this crisis will pass. We will go back to normally, eventually. However, before thinking about relaunching the book industry, we need to think about creating new readers. This needs to be done through education. Governments must focus on encouraging young people to read and allow people to have access to culture. Books can save the world. They allow us to connect with our humanity. Books and culture in general build our collective identity. I only wanted to take some of the lines of what Yasmina has told us. Luis, in early March 2020, it was predicted that the global box office could lose more than $7 billion as a result of the pandemic. What measures can be taken by governments to ensure that independent filmmakers, documentary filmmakers, are able to produce film after this crisis? Luis. Luis has been disconnected, so I will go directly to Nina, waiting that we can resolve our technical issue. So if you allow me, I go to the following question to Nina. You have done tremendous research on cultural policies, including in your acclaimed book, Why Need European Culture Policies? Impact of EU enlargement on countries in transition. According to you, how can cultural policies be adapted to take into account crises like this one? Is there a way to be better prepared for future crises?
Well, I don't think that anyone can be prepared, or anyone could have been prepared for a crisis of such a scale. And I'm not convinced that we can actually, that we could be prepared if ever a crisis of such a scale would come again, pandemic or something else, because this is really fundamentally changing every single aspect of our life, and it happened so suddenly. Yet we have to show our resilience, and we have to show that we can adapt to new situation. So if there is a reflection of how culture policies should be adapted, I will come back to what I said in my previous intervention. First of all, it is indeed a status of the artist, and I'm repeating this all the time because we know of the tremendously important work that Unesco has been doing in the past decades around the status of the artist. And I must say, even in my country, and I see this as a minister at the moment as the biggest problem, even if we have elaborate cultural policy, we are now witnessing so many weaknesses in this particular aspect. And even if we are willing to help to freelance individual artists, because the system has some problems, it is not easy to intervene. So status of the artist, for sure, in the center of the debate. The second one, the whole concept of copyright, and this dilemma between the industry and individual artists. It should not exist, and it's obvious that whatever we can do nationally and internationally in order to improve the systems of copyright, this has to be done. And if there is a reset that should happen in the overall assessment of what we are doing within the field of cultural policies, I think we need to think about copyright quite a lot after this. Then the third thing is probably even in those countries and economies where culture and creative industries are strong in a way that they can be almost independent from any other public support, I think that we should continue to build systematic measures of support for arts and culture. Because not every segment of arts and culture has this economic potential, and the crisis like this shows us again that if we have a good combination between SMEs, private initiative, public sector, somehow it will be easier to manage the crisis. And probably one additional element that we shouldn't forget, again, at this moment when we are all confined within our borders, arts and culture, even in the past, have always crossed the borders. We have been inspiring each other and creating together across the cultures. In the contemporary world, we have invested so much in international cooperation, mobility, co-production. All of this is now non-existent. And while in many other walks of life, it might take some time to go back to what was normal before the crisis, I think in the arts and culture, we should insist that communication, virtual and communication between artists continues regardless of this confinement. We will be giving, in my view, a very important contribution to our societies by continuing to be inspired and work together and exchange, even through initiatives like this one.
Thank you. If I'm not wrong, we are not able to connect with Luis again.
I am listening now. Yeah.
Sí, por favor. I will. Did you hear the question?
No, I just come in again.
Okay.
I have a problem with the internet, and now I am again.
But that's the magic of life. You are back with us.
Yeah.
Luis, in early March 2020, it was predicted that the global box office could lose more than $7 billion as a result of the pandemic. What measures can be taken by government to ensure that independent filmmakers, with documentary filmmakers also, are able to produce film after the crisis?
Well, we are working so hard trying to figure out how to do it. Now we are calling to several concursos, I don't know how to say it in English, for documentaries and fictions and short films and animation and everything right in this moment. And we are doing that. And we think we are trying to get some taxes. I know that DAC, the director's Argentinian representative, the director that is the representative in CISAC, is working so hard to find copyrights from the platforms, from the streaming platforms. And we also are trying to get some taxes about the streaming. And in the Institute, we have a channel, a television channel, and we have a platform. And this platform is working so hard. And now we have 3 times the people who is coming in to see movies, Argentinian movies, in this platform is and we think this is showing us some direction to go during the crisis and after the crisis. I think we could go through our channel, our platform, and probably we are trying to do a second platform to give a place to be the Argentinian movies. Also, I know that some platforms, international platforms, are doing a help and aid, in a monetary aid for Brazil and Mexico. I don't know if you know that. And we think this is a way to go with the audiovisual cultural industry, is through the platforms, and this will be the new way, I think, even if the theaters open again. And we are working hard with the government. The government in Argentina is, I think, is taking the right direction in the emergency, and very, very conscious of the cultural activities are in a serious danger and are beginning to take some laws and some decisions trying to help the people in the industry, in the cultural industry. So now is all in work in progress. We are doing a lot of things and trying to figure out how to do something else for the end of the pandemic.
Thank you, Luis. Okay, we have been having this round of questions, of answers, and we're gonna go to 3 questions that we selected from all of the questions that we received. But before, I would now like to ask you, each of you, a final question to wrap up the conversation. And it's very short, in 30 seconds, what message would you like to convey to decision makers to reinforce the creative sector, not only during this crisis, but during any future crisis? If you had to resume in one sentence, Jean-Michel, what would you like to ask? Or
I would repeat myself, to create a new economy for the cultural sector, for artists, and especially in the digital world. While we were discussing, I was just checking the questions, and the huge support from all over the world we have on this this idea of changing the way the money is distributed from streaming platforms and from the internet platforms, because this money can be useful not only for the digital aspect of creators, but also helping to create funds for helping festivals, for helping theaters, museums, and because these museums, these plays, these concerts, these festivals, they're all on YouTube. You know, so it's a kind of exchange. This is the solution we have now to have access to a kind of adult attitude towards the digital world. Then my final word would be actually urgently to sit with the GAFA and to create a new economy, which is not charity, which is just fair remuneration, and this fair remuneration not only to go to the digital art forms, but also, as I said, to help everybody. And also, my last suggestion would be also to think about how in this world of the digital communication, how can we as musicians, writers, filmmakers, graphic artists to use these new tools also, and maybe to monetize some new way of expressions. I mean, being faithful to our art form, but I mean, you know, you have lots of very interesting things are happening at the moment, where you have some artists at the moment creating. I saw the other day some mimes and magicians, for instance. I mean, doing their show, and they were supported by private companies, you know, and then they could monetize their art form from home. I think that there is this whole. I mean, as artists, we are very creative. Okay, so we also have to survive by being flexible enough and trying to use every tool we have around us. And this is what I would suggest.
Dia?
You know, I think solidarity matters now more than ever before. And I think it's important to state that we're in this together and that our lives are in each other's hands. And I think my message to governments would be for them to understand how important culture and arts is in our societies, how our society is utterly dependent on it through this time. So my message to them would be to invest in creators. And beyond that, I would say that, you know, healthcare and food, you know, are all necessities and crucial for our immediate survival. But I do deeply believe that art and creativity is for our inner survival and our healing, and it is for our resilience.
Angélique?
I would say to the politician and the lawmaker, imagine a world without music. Imagine the world without arts. That's gonna be harder than COVID-19. not only the society will collapse, but there'll be nothing left. Without art, without culture, there's nothing. There's no economy without culture. There's no shared humanity without culture. And they know it. That's why politically they try to break it down. Mm-hmm. And I think we are here all understand how important it is to work with the GAFA. And to speak to the GAFA, we need to sit them down and tell them, when you wake up in the morning and you go work, you have a paycheck. Why can't I? If he can justify that to me, then I will give him my content for free.
That's great. Yasmina, quel serait le message que tu voudrais transmettre?
À qui? À qui pour transmettre un message? Aux politiques, ce sont des sourds.
Oui.
Ce sont des carriéristes. Moi, je pense que puisque la technologie des pointes a atteint un sommet, puisque nous sommes capables, les gens qui nous surveillent sont capables de savoir ce que nous mangeons, ce que nous disons au téléphone, à quel endroit on a retiré de l'argent. Et puisqu'on a créé même une application pour déceler les gens contaminés dans la foule, pourquoi ne pas trouver une application pour essayer justement de suivre un peu l'aventure d'un disque ou d'un livre ou d'un film? Comme ça, les droits des artistes, des écrivains seraient peut-être mieux protégés. À part ça, je suis profane en la matière. Je ne suis pas. Il y a des experts qui pourraient peut-être trouver des solutions. Mais moi, je suis un peu étonné que nos libertés soient complètement surveillées et les droits pas du tout.
Very well. Luis, un último mensaje. Allez-y. Please go.
Yeah, I think we have to have open minds to reinventar, ¿cómo lo dirías?
Reinvent.
Para reinventar nuestros trabajos, our jobs, to create again our jobs that probably will be not the same. And I think we have to believe that we could recreate our way to make our jobs and to continue being artists in another reality.
That's great. And Nina, the question is a little bit different for you. How do you think that you can transmit what you heard today and what artists are feeling right now? We lost Nina?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, please.
Yes. From what I sense, and I've been talking to a number of my colleagues, ministers, in the past weeks, there is an understanding, and it's not a question of making them sensitive, but it is a question of really making tough choices at the level of the government and finding the most appropriate ways to mitigate and to make this situation easier. It is really a very difficult task. I'm once again mentioning the uncertainty, but I would like to highlight the solidarity as well, because it's only in the in a very close cooperation between us, the politicians, and the sector, that we will be able to survive this crisis and to build probably what is coming afterwards on some solid grounds, because this is what we need to think about. Yes, it is about surviving the immediate crisis, but even more important to envisage how we create a good basis for creation in this new normal that is going to follow after the crisis.
Thank you, Nina. So now for the questions. We received one question from Isabelle. It is directed to Jean-Michel Jarre or Angélique Kidjo. Do you think that this crisis could, or at least should, accelerate the adoption of solutions similar to the EU copyright directive around the world?
I can answer to that.
Oui, Jean-Michel. Allez-y.
I mean, yes, of course. I think that we fought with actually Angélique and everybody at CISAC and with a lot of other artists to make this European directive alive against monstrous lobbying from GAFA and from Google particularly. And we succeeded with a lot of haters on the internet, we succeeded to actually to create a moment where you had, it was before and after this European directive, very important to say just to the world, and I think it will have a domino effect, to say to the world, you know, copyright is important, regulation is important, the protection of copyright is important. And you know, I would like to go, when we are talking about solutions and reinforcing this, this directive, one very simple idea I propose would be to think about why not these days creating the concept in days where copyrights are really criticized by GAFA and by lots of people. Why not going to the other way around and to create the concept of eternal copyright? And I mean by this that after a certain period of time, the rights of movies, of music, of everything would go to a global fund, to help artists, and especially artists in emerging countries, like in Africa. Like we said, this is a real emergency. This wouldn't cost anything to anybody. Could be done tomorrow. You know, let's think about the Ninth Symphony of Beethoven. This is the anthem of the European community, and this is in the public domain. It doesn't get any rights. If the same rights on the Ninth Symphony were applied like a recent song, and this money could go to help European artists, for instance, and create a global fund. This is a very simple idea, and this idea can only exist because Europe always defending the and respected artists, and this European directive is a very good sign for the world.
Very well. Question from Floris. That's a question for Nina. The cultural and creative sectors are employing more people aged between 15 and 29 years than any other sectors. In your opinion, what efforts should be undertaken to support young creators in time of crisis?
I would come back to what I said initially. It really depends very much from a case to case, from a country to country, because we see that with the young artists, many of them work in precarious conditions, very uncertain jobs, and in a crisis like that, while there is a lot of perspective, and when in better times, or when the situation was much better, this created a lot of opportunities. But the second there is a crisis, it left them without almost any protection, because many of them couldn't, even in those countries where there is a system of support for artists, could get to the situation where they would deserve a certain status. So this is part of the puzzle that we don't know how is going to be built afterwards, but for sure each one of us in our respective countries that is responsible for developing responses should take a special consideration of young artists, because we have to know the creative industry was developing in such a way that it was attracting a lot of young people, and we can't now leave them without adequate response.
Very well. And that is a question from Danielle to anyone of the panel. How do we work with and empower artists and cultural workers who are unable to adapt their practice to online platforms, either because they lack the access to technology or knowledge of how to exploit it to their benefit? Qui veut répondre? Who want to...
Moi, je peux répondre à ça.
Oui.
Avant les technologies, moi, quand j'ai commencé à faire ma musique, c'est la créativité qui était en place. Il y a différentes formes d'exprimer son art. La technologie, c'est un facilitateur. Ce n'est pas la technologie qui crée. Donc, dans le monde de la création, des créations artistiques, tout doit être pris en compte. Ce n'est pas seulement ceux qui peuvent aller sur les plateformes qui doivent exister. On doit pouvoir donner de la place à toutes les formes d'art et permettre à la diversité de la planète que nous sommes à avoir accès à l'art et à faciliter cet accès à l'art. S'il n'y a pas d'ordinateur, s'il n'y a pas de cinéma, on ne peut pas fermer tous les cinémas. moi, quand j'étais gamine, je regardais, il y avait un écran et les gens venaient à la maison ou au quartier, on décidait que tel jour, on va regarder tel film, on le regardait tout le monde dans la rue. C'est-à-dire qu'il faut, l'art doit demeurer humaine. Il ne faut pas déshumaniser l'art parce qu'il y a des plateformes. Il faut qu'il y ait de la place pour toute forme d'expression d'art. Donc, moi, je pense que si on réfléchit dans cette direction-là, il y a des gens qui n'ont pas de liseuse et qui lisent. Il faut que les livres soient aussi, peuvent exister en même temps que les liseuses. Il faut que toute forme d'art ait une différente façon de se faire. Every form of art have to have their place. I mean, it's not only technology that allowed arts to exist. And if you take indigenous art, most of them don't have technology. We have storytelling that doesn't have technology, that have to be existed, that have to exist. We need arts to show really the diversity of our humanity and the tolerance of accepting different forms of art, not the dictatorship of technology. Technology is a facilitator. It cannot define how people do art around the world.
Je peux ajouter un petit mot sur ce que vient de dire Angélique et je suis absolument d'accord avec ça.
In English.
Yeah, I'm just one word because I'm absolutely supporting what Angélique just said. I mean, artists were existing before electricity. They will exist after the internet, as long as we allow them to survive.
That's great. Somebody wants to quote something? No, it's okay? Then great. We tried to answer as best as we could. And now only to do a conclusion of this debate. First of all, I wanted to thank all of you for this rich and through provoking discussion. It was very provocative. I don't know if you heard, but it was provocative, and it's part of the debate that we have to have in next weeks, months, and years, unfortunately. As Jean-Michel Jarre said, art provides a necessary escape for people who are confined to their home. Culture can be a tool for recovery. It's a solution bringing us together. Dia Khan rightly pointed out that this crisis has demonstrated that art is a necessity, not a luxury. It is what connects us as human beings, what provides us with hope. Angélique Kidjo said, culture liberates people. All of our panelists agree on one thing. The social and economic rights of artists are central to help the creative sector recover from COVID-19 pandemic. We need to rethink how we protect and support artists who are enriching our lives every day. The Minister Nina Obdjian said that reviewing the concept of copyright should be at the core of this response, ensuring that artists are paid fairly for their work, especially in the digital environment. Luis Puenzo has reminded us that we need to work with online distribution platforms and governments in order to protect the diversity of cultural content online and allow independent voices to be heard. And Yasmina Kadra said that culture connects us with our humanity. The current crisis will pass, but we must find long-term solutions to make sure that culture will continue to be resilient. This inaugural debate is just the beginning. For those of you listening from around the world, I would like to invite all of you to start your own ResiliArt movement. UNESCO prepared a debate guide and also a social media guide. You can find these documents in our website of UNESCO, and please continue to debating with us on social media and organize your own debate with your peers and culture professionals. We would like to invite you to share with us the results of your debate so that UNESCO can make sure to share them with the government representative. Thank you all, the panelists that were today with us. I know that it was a big exercise for all of us. Thank you very much. Thank you to the listener. I would also like to thank our partner, media partner, the art newspapers. And a big thank to CISAC partners, because you have been really great in this moment that UNESCO wanted. First of all, the debates, hear your voices of artists who you represent. And also to my UNESCO colleagues who organized this event. Thank you also to our media partner. And please, I will leave you to close the debate. Each of you, thank you very much from part of UNESCO. Please, Jean-Michel.
Yeah, I mean, thank you to UNESCO and also all CISAC people to being able to organize such a platform, and are really encouraging in every country and beyond other societies, but to organize the same kind of discussions, because more, I mean, as we need you as artists, we need you, and also we need also the support of, as Yasmina was saying, the readers, but also the listeners and the watchers. And we should watch each other. And good luck, and see you next time.
Dia.
Thank you. Thank you. It's just been an honor to get to listen to all of you remarkable people. And I would like to thank everyone who's been listening and watching. And I think, as we all know, the challenges are very great in front of us. But I think if we continue the conversation and we remain open to tap into our own creativity and each other's creativity, I think we will get there. I don't think it will be easy, but I think it's part of our job as artists to try and hold our leaders' feet to the fire and ensure that they don't forget any segment of society, including us. I think we typically speak very often about injustices and oppressions in our society that other groups face, and I think when we face them ourselves, we're slower to mobilize. So I think this is a wonderful initiative that is connecting us all and is ensuring that we have a united voice, and that artists can be heard and creators' rights and works can be protected and promoted.
Thank you. Angélique?
Thanks for having me. There is a saying in my country, they say, take one hand to wash the other. We are each other's keepers. And as long as we keep that in mind, everything we do gonna be all right. We are human beings together. Art is the form that we choose to connect one another. Our soul has no color. That's why our art allowed our soul to shine, to touch others. And we need to protect that in many different ways. And let's get this conversation going on to hear about the public, what we bring and what they can't not live without. We need to find a coalition that will inform the fight we're gonna fight after the confinement, to have argument when the gaffer comes and tell the people, the artists that are asking to be paid, they are infringing upon your freedom. We make the public free. They kept them in jail. So let's have our humanity, shared humanity together to help us through.
Thank you, Angélique. Yasmina, un dernier mot?
Ben moi, j'ai écrit quelque part que pour vivre pleinement sa vie, il faut savoir aimer de chaque folklore un chant et de chaque religion un saint. Et je pense que pour vivre totalement et merveilleusement sa vie, il faut savoir aimer les chanteurs, les comédiens, les écrivains, parce que ce sont ces gens-là qui nous orientent vers ce qui nous émerveille. Et donc, je dis à tout le monde, Azul Fillaoun, au revoir, salam alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Salam alaikum. Luis, última palabra, querido.
Gracias, Ernesto, y gracias a la UNESCO, a CISAC y a DAC. Perdón, estoy hablando. Thank you, Ernesto, UNESCO, CISAC, and DAC, the Association of the Directors in Argentina, que han peleado incansablemente por los derechos de autor. They fight from years for the copyrights in Argentina and Latin America. And thank you to let me be their representative here. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, my dear Minister, Nina.
Thank you, Ernesto, and thank you to all the panelists. I felt a bit like an extraterrestrial being the only politician among such esteemed panelists. It was inspiring. It made me think about many things. And I would just like to say that we should promote this initiative, ResiliArt. I think it resonates well in its ideas, even in its name, and we shouldn't forget about international solidarity, even if we are addressing the crisis at the moment nationally. So thank you, UNESCO, for this initiative, and I will make sure also through whatever channels I have to promote and share information about what you did.
Okay, thank you to all. Be safe in the name of UNESCO and CISAC. Be safe. That's the first thing to remind. And finally, that ResiliArt movement begins. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.